Welcome back. Today's going to be another installment for the youth baseball players, whether that's the players themselves, the parents, and also coaches at this level. Now, the information I'm going to give to you is going to seem like it's actually advanced, but it's really not. One of the things I've been in communication with a lot of the coaches across the nation right now with the Little League World Series going on. Our phones are basically very busy going, talking to different individuals, getting their points of view. There's podcasts popping up with all kinds of brand new YouTube channels and Facebook pages to where we're communicating. Now, we're diving into a very specific topic, and that's the idea behind development. When is it actually important to transition youth sports from development into actual performance? Now, typically individuals will say that age group of 8 through 12U, they should be concentrating on fun. Anything they do, keep it very simple. Don't overwhelm them with information. Um, during the tournaments or during their games, the coaches shouldn't be calling out the pitch counts or the pitch deliveries. Um, so we're going to break it down a little bit more. And we do have a podcast planned to carry out with at least three of the major contributors, different coaches and scouts within the nation that are combining, we're coming together. Whether it's going to be on my channel, this one here, or if it's going to be on one of theirs. I think their channels will probably get more views, but I'll let you know the contact points to view that podcast. Now, things that are being exercised at the Major League Baseball level, we can understand is able to be done because there's so many personnel in charge of keeping track of statistics. And that's everything from hit trackers to pitch counts, the whole 9 yards. Every Major League Baseball player, they have at least three individuals tracking just their individual performances. Okay, whether it's with their own team or if they're visiting an opponent's stadium, they have record keepers there. Even the announcers. If any of you haven't seen the Bob Uecker documentary that just came out here within the last month and a half or so, whether you're a Milwaukee Brewers fan or not, I suggest you go watch it. Okay, it's fairly heart tugging and telling you something about one of our legends. Well, pay attention that as Bob Uecker was announcing the games, he would have a very thick, basically, the old yellow phone book type information to where it would tell him all the stats of all the players, their history, description, so on and so forth. So as they would come up to bat or if they made a play, he could literally just fast forward to that page within the document and announce that information. Bob Uecker didn't have all of that information stored in his head. Within the broadcasting booths and within the statistics collecting, there's a ton of information. Now, that level of information is going to be, severely advanced compared to what our youth players need to know. But don't be afraid to take at least one step above what is in common practice today, especially in that 8 to 12-year-old level. You'll be surprised that the more that you actually coach two kids, the greater percentage of information they're going to retain. So I'm going to give you an example. If you only supply them with 2 instructions at a practice, they might retain just one thing. If you teach them 10 things at practice, even if they forget 8 of those things, they've retained 2. So you're gaining ground already. So again, we're going to sit down for a podcast and actually describe what age groups are able to retain the information, especially if they're consecutively playing travel baseball or little league for years in a row. What do they actually retain? Now, in previous videos, I've mentioned what you could do to actually test your player out. Getting that third-party independent evaluation. Here in Wisconsin, through the Milwaukee Brewers organization, there's the hit, pitch, and run competition, where they visit multiple communities. Even private entities will carry out a hit, pitch, and run event, and they will calculate your score and share it with you. And it's based off of everybody that's in the hit, pitch, and run competition. So kids out of Milwaukee, kids out of Madison, Eau Claire, they can go to all these events and it will track them compared to where they actually fall within the state out of the individuals that have participated. So I want to get to the point where we're actually looking at the younger individuals, that 8, 9, and even 10-year-old level, when pitching is starting to be introduced. Okay, now I want to make a highlight here. Depending on whether you're playing Little League or travel ball and the different organizations that are associated with, it could be going from machine pitch directly into player pitch, or there could be a break in there where it goes from T-ball to a couple of years of coach pitch and then directly into player pitch. How do you determine where to start with a 9U player pitch individual? Where do you start teaching? How do you coach and introduce pitching? Are you working in conjunction with the catchers? Because once again, folks, even at 9 years old, two individuals playing the pitching position, catcher's position, they have to work very well together. The catcher is also responsible for calling out the game. So we're going to be going over this complaint that we've received, saying that, coaches shouldn't be sitting from the dugout and actually, calling out the next pitch to the catcher. It should be left up to the pitcher to learn, to develop through his experience from the pitching mound. I believe we could take it even a step above that, especially with travel organizations that are either practicing throughout the year. When it's practice season, before they start actually traveling to tournaments, it doesn't take a 9-year-old very long to pick up and retain the very basics. So if all you're doing is introducing the proper form and mechanics to a throw, don't go overboard, because every player's mechanics might be altered a little bit. Taller players with longer arms might be able to, pitch differently than, say, somebody that's a sidearm pitcher. Or if you can find a youth player that's actually a submarine delivery pitcher. Or if they have a combination. A lot of coaches will say only teach just 2 basic pitches. Okay, just teach a fastball or maybe a slider, and just keep it very simple. Allow those players to adjust to that. I don't believe that's the extent that a 9 or even 10, 11-year-old can retain within coaching. I believe most 9-year-old players, especially those that have moved up from coach pitch into player pitch, they understand where the strike zone is as a batter. So you don't have to relive that experience telling them, hey, this is the strike zone. It's, from the bottom of your elbows to your knees, so on and so forth, and as wide as the plate. Now, one of the things I can do to emphasize that we can take it even to, Major League Baseball level, something that we all teach and all coach to the entry-level player, even T-ballers. What's the very first thing that coaches tell a T-ball player? Keep your eye on what? Keep your eye on the ball. Okay, so what's the next instruction with keeping your eye on the ball? Once you get to that 7, 8U level, whether it's machine pitch or coach pitch, how do you determine the players, or how do you instruct the players to hit the ball? Is it just see it coming and swing through it? Okay, we can take it a step further, and the kids will adapt to it. They will retain the information. So one of the phrases used, even at the Major League Baseball level, is to read the laces. It becomes a lot more difficult when you have a 105-mile-an-hour pitch coming at you. By the time you can even pick up the ball to read the laces or the revolution of the ball, it's very hard to focus in to tell if it's going to be a slider. But at younger ages, especially 9, 10, 11, and 12-year-olds, the ball's being delivered at a slower rate than what their hand and eye coordination can pick up on. So even your 9U pitcher that's only delivering at 35 miles an hour, the batter can see the ball, and they are able to read the laces to be able to predict which way the ball is going to go. Okay, so obviously they're able to see the ball coming. If it's coming right at their head, most of them are able to get out of the way or dodge the ball. So at what point in the delivery of the pitch are players picking up on the eye and the ball, and what are they focusing in on? One of the best instruction I ever got as a youth player, this goes back 40 years ago, folks. My 9 little league coach taught me how to read the laces. I already knew how to keep my eye on a ball, but to increase my batting averages, they're like, as soon as you possibly can pick up on the ball, take it to the next step. So as you see the pitcher winding up and the ball is about here in its forward motion, right at this point, you see the ball. But as soon as the hand continues forward, focus in on the laces and read the laces. Folks, I'm going to tell you that as a young child and to the players that I'm coaching now, when they receive that instruction, their batting averages increases by almost double. Okay? So if we can get to that point with the introductory baseball player, in T-ball to obviously T-ball, it's being hit, so the ball's not spinning or being delivered. But even machine pitch or coach pitch for 7 and 8U, it won't take them 2 years to learn that. You can literally coach that within a couple different practices and the players will retain it. They will then adapt over time and that skill will be able to improve over the season. By the end of one season, players will be able to read the laces and improve their batting average. Okay? So the only thing to be focusing in on is the delivery, the path of the delivery, and the reading the laces to tell what the ball's going to do. So if it's a 2-finger split fastball, the laces are going to look the same. It's going to roll over, okay, with an overhand release. They know that it's going to take a natural curving path or a straight line path. If the laces are turning either direction, they're going to be able to pick up whether it's a slider or a curveball. Okay, it's not very hard to instruct players to recognize these things. Present these pitches to them as batters. When it comes to the pitchers, don't be afraid to instruct or coach your pitchers to have more than 2 pitches. Concentrate on them getting the ball across the strike zone, across the plate, into the catcher's glove. Okay? Whether it's in the strike zone or around the area for the ball, that's the main focus, and that's the path. But they will also be able to understand by the way that they grip the ball that the laces will be spinning in a different direction within the delivery. So you can have from the overhand delivery, throwing the route of a fastball, you can turn it into a slider just by the way the rotation of the laces are moving. So it's not that much advanced. It's not Major League Baseball level, right? These are things kids can easily adapt and pick up. Now, can you go into a player's repertoire of pitches and say they need to have 5 or 6? Okay. How many pitches can be delivered from the overhand throwing delivery with similar release? Okay. The only thing you're changing is just finger position within the laces of the ball. How many pitches? At least 5. So with instruction, most of the youth coaches will say, keep it very simple. Just give them 2 to perfect. No, like take it above that. Allow them to experiment with at least 5 of the pitches. They can determine out of those 5 which they're strong at, which ones they need to focus on or improve at. Once a 9U player that has taught this, by the time they get to 10 and 11, they're going to be able to perfect those 5 pitches. Trust me, okay? They will be able to adapt and pick it up. They will be able to retain that information from year to year. When they get competitive with the teams and the coaches that are telling their players just throw a strike or a slider, okay, your pitchers, if you introduce them earlier in their experience, they're going to dominate from the mound. Now, as far as the pitching speed deliveries, okay, realize if they're really putting a lot of effort into it, where they're, you know, putting all of their strength and their motion into throwing fastballs, it reduces the amount of time within pitch counts that they're going to injure themselves. Okay? Putting the strain on their muscles and tendons that they are not going to be able to withstand. Again, slowing the pitches down where affordably, and teaching them at least 5 different pitches. Okay? They're going to be able to last longer without getting injury. They're going to have a goal to set to be able to reach efficiency with 5 different pitches in 1 year. For, say, just 9U, their very first year. They already know the strike zone. They already know how to throw overhand and deliver the ball as an infielder or outfielder. They know how to throw. Giving them a goal of 5 pitches, if they're somewhat accurate, it's nothing to give them instruction of 5 pitches and allow them to learn on their own. So if you're a coach in a dugout in a tournaments and you have a pitcher up there that has these 5 pitches within their instruction, should it be the coach calling it out? Saying, okay, oh, your last one was a fastball, this one slow it down and do a slider, or the next one do a changeup, or this one get it on the inside of the pitch. Folks, give even these 9 and 10-year-olds credit. They can figure it out. And between two minds of the catcher and the pitcher, they'll figure it out. If you're the coach, do your job. Do your job to identify the batter. Okay? By the time either Little League or travel players get to the 9 and 10-year-old level, they should be able to recognize their field movements. So for your defensive players out in the field, if they see a kid that's, larger than your typical 9 or 10-year-old, they're probably going to back up and like, hey, this guy's probably got the power to drive it really far into the outfield. If they see one of the smaller kids, their intuition tells them, oh, I can creep forward. I can get in front of the baseline or get up to the edge of the grass because this player is more than likely to hit it here. Again, one of the things that I was blamed for this year was taking things too far, that I was getting too complicated with our youth baseball teams. I introduced hit counts, or hit trackers, A player, through a typical 6-inning game of either Little League or travel ball, if they recognize a batter getting up to the bat, they probably remember the previous batting. Okay, so if the very first inning, one of the bigger kids gets up and line drives it to the fence, the outfielders are not going to forget that player. Okay? They know, because they don't want to fail, they're going to learn fairly quick to recognize the individual. Okay? By the 3rd or 4th inning, when they see him again back coming around in rotation, they're going to learn from that mistake to adjust themselves. If it's a right-handed batter, typically the left field side of the diamond, those players are going to move that direction. It should be something taught already at the 7 and 8U level to be able to identify that. It's not that advanced. Or if a left-handed batter comes up, they're going to be moving to the right side of the diamond. In travel organizations that actually use coach pitch and they have the circle marked out on the center of the field for the pitching mound, where the pitching student player or youth player has to stand in that circle, are you instructing which side of the circle to go to because the batter comes up and either left or right-handed? Within the very first part of your season of coaching, players should be able to understand it. Every single player that might fill in the pitcher's position. If it's a right-handed batter, you're on this side. If it's left-handed, you're on this side. Take it just one step above that. The outfielders can do the exact same thing. If it's a left-handed, you move to the right field. If it's a right-handed batter, you move to the left field. Okay? Taking it one step above the basics, the kids will absorb it. All right, so we're going to get to what I've drawn up on the board. Hopefully you guys can understand what that is. It's a little low. Let me see here. Best if I adjust the camera. Okay, obviously that's the baseball and read the laces. We can understand as the ball is spinning through the air, we're going to be able to see the directional movement of the laces, whether they're from top to bottom, left to right, right to left. You can pick that up. And the sooner you can pick up reading the laces from the release of the fingers, as the ball is rolling off the fingers, their batting average will increase. All of your players. Once they have learned that instruction, all of your players will increase in batting average. Now going to the actual strike zone. Okay, so this is from the pitcher's point of view. These are the batting boxes, the front of the base, obviously. This is the strike zone. Now, if you're coaching kids to say, just get the ball across the plate in the strike zone, that's the area that you're focusing in, right? If they're not that accurate and they do deliver a ball outside of that, they're about as accurate as the batters at being able to hit the ball. The talent level is going to be similar. As players improve, especially batters that are reading the laces, anything delivered in that strikeout zone is going to be hit, especially for the ages delivering the ball from 35 to approximately 60 miles an hour. They're going to be able to hit it if they have any talent whatsoever. Okay, they're going to be able to. So when it comes to 9, 10, even 11U pitching, if the players are instructed to give 5 pitches, what area is now opened up? The strike zone and the 4 corners. 5 pitches, 5 spots to deliver it to. Is that something that a 9, 10, 11-year-old can understand? Yes. Okay. Left, right, top, bottom. Can even 9 and 10-year-olds understand that? Okay. It's not advanced information, folks. Now, again, as the pitcher is only turned around facing the same direction as the defensive players, as I stated earlier, your outfielders and infielders, when they're on defense, they should be able to identify when a hitter is going to be favoring the left side of the field or right side of the field, depending on their strength and size. Okay, some of the middle-sized individuals are going to be deceiving. The players have to see their swing first. Okay, so typically, coaches will tell pitchers on the very first pitch to the player, they should put it right down the middle of the strike zone. Because those players haven't been able to see your pitch yet. They haven't been able to see that fastball right down the middle. Show it to them, and they're going to have that as their adjustability, like, oh, okay, that was right there. If they don't swing at it, they have now picked up information that they can use for the next consecutive pitches or the consecutive innings when they come up against that pitcher. For every delivery, those batters, whether they're 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, they're forming memory and their bodies will automatically adjust to it. Automatically. Without the coaches telling them anything. The pitchers, again, throwing that dead center down the middle, okay? If the batter swings on it, okay, it might be hit. If it's not swung on, they're now relieving some of their information that they're trying to hide from the batter. So the follow-up, the second pitch, where would you go? Again, it depends on where the player stands in the batting box. So as in most youth baseball, where do the coaches tell the players to stand? Right next in the middle of the batting box, right next to home plate, right? So instead of just telling players, okay, just stand in the middle of the box and just swing from there. How much more advanced is to tell them, hey, if you saw your first pitch and it was really fast, back up. Give yourself an additional time frame to be able to pick up on the ball to hit it. Move to the back of the batting box. Okay, they can pick that up. That's not advanced. If the ball was coming in really slow, but it might have been outside, or if they noticed it was close to almost hitting them, the players can figure this out. If the ball was delivered inside really tight to them, to the point where they didn't swing at it and they got a ball out of it, and they're able to recognize the speed of the first pitch, where do you move? If the player thinks it's slow, where they know they can get a hold of it as long as it's in the strike zone, where do you tell them to move? To the front of the batting box. Okay, this is not overcomplicated or advanced information. At what point in the age should this be taught? That's what the podcast will be about in the future here. So, again, taking it maybe even one step above what is considered to be age appropriate is not going over the top. It sets a focal point for the players to achieve. In baseball, I've created videos, if you look down the list, focusing on player burnout. Normally that happens with reputation and without some goals being set. If there are goals being set at a reasonable amount ahead of the player's talent, they're going to be constantly focused in on the goal, trying to work towards it. So instead of just giving them a goal that they are easily able to achieve during the season, step it out, maybe even to the age-appropriate performances of the next age group. That way in a season, they can see their progress. It will say, oh, I didn't reach it this year, but I'm within arm's reach of making it over the winter months or in the off season and into the next season. Again, the following season, set those parameters out to, say, a year and a half ahead. Always moving the goal just so it's out of reach. Now, if they do reach that goal, you have found a special player, okay? They will be appreciative, but be ready as a coach or as a parent to talk to your player, identify factually where their performance level is at, where their goal is, and within their progress. If they're meeting their goals within a short amount of time within practice and baseball experience, address setting new goals immediately. Otherwise, the players are going to lose focus and they're going to lose interest in playing baseball. So, again, folks, if you are an introductory coach, say that you haven't coached before, you're volunteering now because your child's first getting into baseball, or maybe you're moving from a rec ball coach up to travel ball or little league type conditions, don't be afraid to challenge the players. So I'm going to write you a number that's easily remembered. Okay, so this is even for the adults, all right? Even for college coaches. These numbers are very easy to understand. Even a 7, 8, and 9-year-old can understand. But yet it allows a guideline for you to practice. This is something I'm going to be introducing also on the podcast that we take it, the next step. If there is 100% of information to be shared to a player about baseball, you can't give them all 100% all at once. Okay? You can attempt to try to give them as much information as you possibly can, and they're going to retain approximately 2% of what you tell them. If you attempt to give them all the information, they'll retain approximately 2%. Now, if you decide what the age-appropriate talent level is, and you set your goals to coach them for approximately 20% more than what is age-appropriate. So let's say 10% is acceptable and age-appropriate. If you teach them 20%, how much of that 20% are they going to retain? If they're keeping 2% of 100, what's 2% of 20? Okay, so hopefully you understand that point. Because yes, they're going to retain less if you're only telling them about the 20%. But that's going to be more realistic, right? You're not overloading the player and his capability of retaining information. But if you were to only instruct or coach 10% of what needs to be done with the ball player, the number's even lower. So by setting your instruction approximately 10% higher than what is appropriate for the age, and they only retain 2%, they're getting more overall. So we're going to be discussing at what point, what is the dividing line according to age and challenges within introduction of coaching skills. Where is the national average? This is something that AI cannot provide to you. It is only something out of the experience accumulated by local coaches, myself included. What is appropriate at what age? You can ask Google and it's going to tell you the basic information in there. How do you specifically identify your player and where they're at? Again, finding out, having an evaluation telling them where their skill level is at, and then setting the bar 20% above that. If they have reached 10%, that is your maturity level of the player naturally with age. 20% is setting the bar a little bit higher, but it's still reasonable and able to be reached. Even if a player only achieves 18% of that goal, they have already done better than the average player of the average expectations. Okay? Don't be afraid to text to the next level. So if you have a 9-year-old or 9U player, don't be afraid to introduce them to 10-year-old information. If you have a 10-year-old, don't be afraid to introduce them to even 12U information. Same with 12U, okay? They have 4 years. If they have consistently played 4 years in a row from 8 to 12U, they have those routines locked down, okay? They know them. You don't have to revisit the instruction if they've retained the information. At 12U, don't be afraid to introduce them to 16U level baseball. Again, setting the bar a little bit higher, giving them a goal at least 1.5 to 2 years ahead of their capabilities. They've had 4 years to perfect youth baseball. The 2 years of 13, 14, around about that, for middle school ages, don't be afraid to introduce high school. That's the next step up. It's not just 1.5 years or the next year within the age, it's the next step within the baseball evolution. 4 through 8 is step 1, 13 and 14 is step 2, high school step 3, college, JUCO or junior college step 4, D3, D2, D1, step 5, and the majors. Okay? Every baseball player from Major League Baseball, legends, all the way down to your T-ball player, don't be afraid to give them a little bit more information. So with that, we'll be back. We're just now arranging the podcast. You'll be surprised at some of the individuals that we get involved with this. Over 150 years of baseball experience is to be in this podcast. Some newcomers, younger individuals that are right now coaching within college baseball, to individuals that are, have already retired from coaching at college or at the Major League Baseball level, former Major League Baseball players. Folks, we're going to narrow it down because as we advance in baseball, our kids are getting more capable of picking up things at an earlier age. With the assistance of technology, with some of the screen time that some of the players might be interested in, your 7 and 8-year-olds that are playing video games that involve baseball, what level of challenge do you have the games preset at? Okay, now we're not promoting screen time, but obviously if players are living baseball athletes, okay, those that just everything revolves around baseball, I'm sure they have a game. The games themselves can be at an actual instructional device. So if they're playing it at the novice level where it's just make believe and they're able to hit things that are unrealistic, don't be afraid to set the settings to the next level up. Even if they are losing all the time, they are learning something. They're learning the next advanced level within the game. If they're playing at the middle settings, go into their settings and put it on expert. Okay. Even if they're losing again, they're going to learn more. They're going to get more realistic performances out of their electronic or AI drawn out players. Don't be afraid to challenge them. If you're the type of organization that you're like, yeah, we're here about development, and it's about fun all the way through 12U, you're nothing but a money grab. All right? Players, parents, even other coaches. If you are still focusing in at 12U to where it's just a playground game, you're not competitive, you have let the kids down. Okay? But we're going to get into it. Again, we're going to go into the 150 years of experience from multiple individuals. We're going to cover where in your performance level, where in the maturity level of your player is, and we're going to describe how you can identify it to where the realistic goal is to set for them and where the goal needs to be set to challenge them. We are losing way too many baseball players that have talent in that 13 and 14-year-old range. The goal is to identify the younger players that are really serious about baseball, that really love the game. Okay, those players aren't going to leave at 13 or 14 unless they're burnt out. So what can we do to actually keep them focused on the future? Right? So when they get to that 12-year-old level, they are interested in saying, okay, I got 2 more years. Here's my goal for the next 2 years. Here's something to work for. And then by the time they're going 14, they're going to be revisiting middle school baseball, set their goal for high school. So they have a whole year and a half to work towards it. Okay, same within high school. Set the goal. Okay, now if you're playing this, enjoy the level that you're at, but set the goals. Give yourself something to reach for, not just to make it to college. Once you get there, what is your goal? Your sophomore year. Sophomore year. What's your goal for the end of your senior year? Okay, stay at least one step ahead. Sorry, I'm just looking at the time because YouTube will accept this long, but this will run overtime on Facebook. So we'll be back. Like I said, we're in the finalization of discussing when this podcast will take place. I will at a further time announce both the Facebook content creators and YouTube content creators. You'll recognize some of the individuals. Okay, you will recognize them. Again, these individuals reached out to me. And within discussion with them, they've like, hey, you have really good points. We have kind of forgotten, because we're at the higher levels, we've kind of forgotten that the junior levels or the youth levels of baseball aren't necessarily being given credit where it deserves. So hopefully you follow along with that. We'll catch you later.